Grandfather's girlfriend's daughter moved in, took control of our house, and claimed everything was hers. She bragged about it only to learn she had no legal right to anything. Hey Reddit, I'm Joe, a 28-year-old guy using a pseudonym, and I've got quite the story to share about how my grandfather's girlfriend's daughter thought she'd inherit everything after his passing. Rewind to the summer of '75. My grandfather was a military hero deployed in Vietnam, while my mom and aunt were attending a prestigious boarding school in New England, probably being taught etiquette and other dated notions of ladylike behavior. Meanwhile, my grandmother fell for another man at the country club. Imagine this. While my grandfather was battling in the humid jungles, risking his life for his country, my grandma was back home enjoying martinis and flirting with the tennis coach. Talk about a contrast, right? Then, without warning, she vanished. She took whatever valuables she could, including my grandfather's beloved Rolex and a substantial portion of our family's jewelry, and disappeared without a trace. No goodbye note, no calls, just vanished into thin air. Now, my grandfather, despite being the sweetheart that he was, handled the news with an unexpected grace. News of my grandmother's departure reached him late, given the military's inefficiency in relaying personal messages. He accepted her departure with a heavy heart and didn't pursue her or contest the divorce. He always said, if she's happier without me, that's all I want for her. Truly, a saint in disguise. When summer break rolled around, my mom and Aunt Annie returned from school expecting the typical family vacation to Martha's Vineyard or some other upscale getaway. Instead, they stepped into a new reality. No mother in sight, their father still stationed overseas, and a whirlwind of confusion. Once my grandfather managed to return home, he found a family in shambles. My mom was just 15 and my aunt only 13, both grappling with their mother's abrupt exit amidst the already tumultuous teenage year. It wasn't easy, but in those challenging times, my grandfather's resilience and kindness shone brighter than ever. He stepped up magnificently. After retiring from the military, he pulled my mom and aunt out of that rigid boarding school to raise them himself in our grand family mansion. Yes, we're talking old money and ancestral estate. Raising two teenage girls alone during the late '60s was no small feat, but my granddad excelled at it. He mastered hair braiding, patiently navigated the complexities of menstrual cycles, and even ventured to give the talk, which, according to my mom, was a cringeworthy yet endearing attempt. He ensured they had everything, both material and emotional support, and encouraged them to chase their dreams. He even faced down the high society gossips at the country club, defending his daughters from petty whispers about the poor, abandoned girls with fierce love and unwavering support. Fast forward a few years, and the sisters celebrated their marriages in a lavish double wedding. Think hundreds of guests, a cake that towered over guests, the whole 9 yards. They even continued living in the grand mansion with their husbands, truly keeping it all in the family. Those were golden years filled with laughter, love, and the bustling chaos of two young couples embarking on their journeys together. Granddad thrived as the affectionate father-in-law and was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandfather. Now brace yourself. This is where the story takes a dark turn. When I was 8, my parents and my aunt and uncle went on an adults-only road trip, dubbing it a second honeymoon for both couples. They left me and my twin cousins, Zoe, and I vividly recall the morning they departed. My mom was in a breezy sundress, her hair casually pinned up. She bent down to hug me tightly while my dad playfully tousled my hair, reminding me to behave for Granddad. Aunt Hannah and Uncle Henry were buzzing with excitement, all laughter and smiles as they climbed into Dad's newly bought gleaming SUV. They waved and blew kisses as they drove off, disappearing down the driveway. That was the last time I saw them. 3 days into their trip, the unimaginable happened. We received a call about a car accident. A head-on collision with a drunk driver claimed their lives, and to add a cruel twist of fate, my mom was pregnant. I lost a sibling I never had the chance to meet. Life can be merciless, sparing no thought for who it affects. I still remember Granddad gathering us to break the news. His hands trembled so much he could barely hold his coffee cup. He tried to stay strong for us, but the tears in his eyes betrayed his sorrow. That moment crystallized the reality that they were truly gone. In the aftermath, it was just me, Zoe, Wendy, and Granddad facing the world together. Those initial years were incredibly tough. I was too young to fully understand the gravity of our loss, but my cousins struggled profoundly. Zoe withdrew into herself, hardly eating at all. She would listlessly move food around her plate, only nibbling a bit when Granddad insisted. Over that year, she became frighteningly thin. Wendy, on the other hand, dealt with her grief through anger. Her rages were wild, filled with screaming and the shattering of anything she could throw. Granddad had to replace our ceramic dishes with plastic ones to prevent injuries. Both refused to attend school, overwhelmed by anxiety to the point of sickness whenever the subject was broached. Granddad, with his boundless empathy, couldn't bear to force them. He understood their pain too well. They missed an entire year of school, but he made sure they received therapy, dedicating himself to their recovery. As for me, I was the silent one. I'd spend hours curled up in my dad's old armchair, clutching his sweater that still held traces of his scent and simply existing quiet. I rarely cried or showed outbursts, which perhaps worried Granddad even more. Despite the turmoil, Granddad was our steadfast protector and healer. He spent hours with Zoe, gently encouraging her to eat just a little more. With Wendy, he was a safe harbor for her storms, holding her close as she screamed her grief into his chest. And for me, he kept the tradition of nightly stories alive, even though I had outgrown bedtime tales. Through it all, Granddad's unwavering support was our sanctuary in a world turned upside down. Granddad used to say that reading those bedtime stories was as much for him as it was for me. Over time, Zoe and Wendy began to heal. They realized that no amount of anger or grief would bring our parents back. It was then that they decided to look after Granddad just as much as he did for us. And you know what? Despite the profound losses we had faced, those years somehow felt almost perfect. We created our own little sanctuary, free from financial worries and overflowing with love, more than we sometimes knew what to do with. Granddad ensured that we never felt like orphans. He was more than just family. He was our rock, our guiding star in every way imaginable. We cherished our routines, Sunday brunches where we all contributed to a lavish meal, movie nights filled with debates over which film to watch. Granddad's preference for old westerns was a frequent but gentle battle, and summer road trips with no particular destination in mind, just us, the car, and the vast open road. Granddad was a constant presence in our lives, our biggest cheerleader at graduations, the helping hand on moving days into our college dorms, and the first call we made whether we were bursting with good news or needing comfort during tough times. I'll never forget the school dance incident when I was so nervous about a potential first kiss that I completely misread the signals. I ended up embarrassingly misunderstanding a girl's attempt to discreetly inform me about an apple piece stuck in my teeth. Crushed, I returned home, convinced my social life was doomed. But Granddad, after hearing my melodramatic tale, simply chuckled and offered his wisdom, saying, "It's her loss, kiddo. You deserve someone who'd kiss the lipstick off your teeth." That's just who he was. Always supportive, always knowing just what to say. Though he wasn't without his moments of sadness, often getting a distant look in his eyes as he remembered my parents, he was as close to perfect as anyone could be for us. However, when I turned 15, things took an unexpected turn. Granddad began attending bingo nights at the local senior center, claiming he needed to mingle with peers his own age. We supported his desire for some fun and social interaction. Little did we know he would find much more than just bingo companionship. It was there that he met someone special, a woman we'll call Marilyn. Plot twist indeed, Marilyn was my English teacher's mother. Talk about a small world. Initially, we were thrilled for Granddad. They had a shared history, having been best friends in high school, so when they rekindled their friendship, it was like magic had struck. There was an instant spark between them. After their dates, Granddad would return home, humming old love songs and wearing the goofiest, most love-struck grin. It was endearing, even if it was a bit odd, seeing such old-school romance in action. Marilyn began visiting us more frequently, and initially, she seemed pleasant enough. She baked cookies, doting on us in a grandmotherly fashion. However, her demeanor shifted subtly at first, then drastically. It began with casual comments about our attire, queries like, "Isn't that skirt a tad short, dear?" Then came her opinions on our eating habits, reminiscing about how, in her day, processed foods weren't a staple like they are now. But things escalated rapidly from there. Soon, Marilyn was imposing strict rules. No skirts above the knee, no midriff-bearing tops, and a ban on junk food. Most shockingly, she believed in corporal punishment. Yes, spanking. This notion felt not just outdated, but outrageous to us. I vividly recall the first time she tried to enforce her draconian discipline on me. I came home late from a study group, and there she was, waiting to ambush me with a lecture about responsibility. She escalated it to attempting to physically discipline me, trying to pull me over her knee like a disobedient child. In a moment of panic, I recoiled so swiftly that I sent a lamp crashing to the floor. The noise summoned Granddad, and I've never seen him so furious. The ensuing argument between him and Marilyn was explosive. I was sure it was the end of their relationship. Yet, after a heartfelt apology and a promise to never overstep again, Granddad, yearning for companionship and dreading loneliness, forgave her. He was too kind-hearted, perhaps too forgiving. Marilyn never dared to pull such stunts in Granddad's presence again. Around him, she was the epitome of sweetness, a veritable angel who could do no wrong, serving up casseroles and scripture with a smile. But as soon as he turned his back, she transformed into a tyrannical figure, a mix of a strict drill sergeant and a fervent preacher. As if Marilyn wasn't problematic enough, her daughter, yes, my English teacher and newly minted step-aunt Monica, moved in a year later to help out. Monica brought a whole new level of malevolence to our household dynamics. At school, she maintained a facade of professionalism. She was strict, but ostensibly fair. However, at home, she was an absolute tyrant. She took to undermining me academically. If I so much as displeased her with a glance, I'd find my grades suffering. Once, I invested weeks into a major English project, pouring my soul into the work. Despite my efforts, it was returned with a harsh C marked in bold, red ink. I was crushed. Granddad, seeing my distress, confronted Monica, demanding justification for such an unexpectedly low grade. Her response? She claimed she had to be overly strict with me to avoid any accusations of favoritism. A ludicrous assertion that seemed more an excuse to mask her vindictiveness. Monica's stubbornness knew no bounds. Whenever Granddad attempted to discuss the matter, she'd dismiss him with a smug arrogance, insisting she was the educational expert, implying her methods were beyond reproach. The situation at home deteriorated rapidly. Monica and Marilyn began to enforce draconian measures. They'd lock us in the garage for days without food or phones, punishing us for supposedly spending too much time on our devices. I remember Zoe once tried to sneak food to her room, only to be caught. Their reaction was extreme. They accused her of hoarding and lacking faith in God's provision. Her punishment was cruel and archaic, kneeling on rice for hours. Our attempts to seek Granddad's intervention were systematically thwarted by Marilyn. She had mastered the art of manipulation, always playing the victim, claiming she was striving to be a good grandmother and chastising us for our ingratitude. Granddad, blinded by love and desperate for companionship, fell for her ploys every time. It felt like we were imprisoned, forced to watch as these two women insidiously eroded our lives. It was like a perverse twist on the Cinderella tale, with no fairy godmother in sight to rescue us. Granddad did what he could to mitigate the abuse, but Marilyn's influence over him was profound. Whenever he started to see reason, she would manipulate his emotions, crying and lamenting about her struggles to integrate into our family, making him second-guess our pleas for help. And Granddad, bless his heart, would fall for it every time. One Christmas, Wendy had saved all year to buy Granddad a beautiful watch. It wasn't extravagantly fancy, but it was engraved, a personal and thoughtful gift. She was brimming with excitement to give it to him. But on Christmas morning, Marilyn accidentally knocked it off the table, shattering its face. Wendy was heartbroken. Instead of offering comfort, Marilyn seized the moment to lecture Wendy about the perils of materialism, claiming that true love didn't require lavish gifts. In the background, Monica smirked, probably thinking about the pricey sweater she had bought for Granddad. It was moments like these that hammered home the toxicity of our living situation. We were in our own home with our beloved grandfather, yet we felt like intruders. By the time I turned 21 and the twins were 23, we couldn't stand another day under the oppressive watch of Marilyn's passive aggressiveness or Monica's overt hostility. The solution was clear. We needed an escape. We moved out and found a tiny apartment in the city center, so small it felt like a converted closet with a kitchenette thrown in, but it was ours. No more of Marilyn dictating our wardrobe, no more of Monica evaluating our every action. It was freedom, and it felt glorious. We continued to visit Granddad because our love for him hadn't waned despite the challenges. But those visits were fraught with tension. Marilyn would hover incessantly, finding any excuse to cut our conversation short or hasten our departure. "Oh, your grandfather needs his rest," she'd insist, even if Granddad was eagerly sharing stories with us. Monica's jabs were relentless. "Oh, Joe, that outfit is quite interesting. I suppose it's what's fashionable for people in your situation." Or to Zoe, "Dear, have you considered returning to school? Community colleges are very accommodating these days." If eye rolling burned calories, I'd have been runway ready from those visits alone. Yet, We endured it all for Granddad's sake. He appeared content, or at least he believed he was happy, and after all he had done for us, how could we deprive him of that belief? Then, as if by some divine intervention, Marilyn passed away. Her heart gave out while she slept. It might sound harsh, but it was a relief. Honestly, her departure felt like the lifting of a dark cloud. She had been nothing short of a menace. The funeral was an ordeal. Monica was theatrically sobbing, painting her mother as a saint, while Zoe, Wendy, and I struggled to maintain our composure in the back, silently sharing our relief. Is that awful? Perhaps. But after everything, our patience had worn thin. Despite our feelings, we saw how deeply Granddad mourned. He wept openly at the funeral, his speeches filled with love and loss. For his sake, we set aside our grievances and focused on supporting him. In the weeks that followed, Zoe moved in with Granddad for a month to ensure he was okay. During this time, we started to see glimpses of the Granddad we remembered, the one who would chuckle at our jokes, reminisce about his army days, and sneak us cookies with a conspiratorial wink. It was as though Marilyn's influence had been a spell that was finally broken with her passing. However, complications arose when Aunt Monica decided not to move out after her mother's death. She claimed it was to take care of Granddad, and at first, we were just relieved to visit him without Marilyn's hovering presence. But over time, we noticed something unsettling. Granddad appeared increasingly weary, not just the typical fatigue of age, but a profound exhaustion that seemed to consume him. He started forgetting small things like his glasses, and then more significant details like calling me by my mother's name, Hannah, which alarmed us deeply. We tried to discuss these concerns with Monica, but she dismissed us every time with a wave of her hand, insisting that she was taking excellent care of him and implying we had done less in the past. Her dismissiveness and audacity left us frustrated and suspicious. Then, a year after Marilyn's death, Granddad passed away. The cause was listed as complications from diabetes, specifically hyperosmolar hyperglycemic state, HHS, a severe condition caused by extremely high blood sugar levels. We were perplexed. Granddad had been meticulously managing his diabetes with a strict diet and medication. How could his condition have escalated so severely? Was it neglect, mismanagement of his diet or medication, or something more sinister? While we wanted to give Monica the benefit of the doubt, the circumstances made it difficult to dismiss our doubts. And now, standing at another funeral, we faced a new revelation. Granddad had never formalized his intentions in a will, something he had often mentioned but never completed. This oversight opened a Pandora's box of potential issues and unanswered questions, leaving us to wonder about the true motivations behind Monica's actions and the care Granddad received in his final days. And Aunt Monica, in her infinite wisdom, assumed that she would inherit everything. Imagine the audacity of this woman. She had only known Granddad for about 5 years while he had raised us for our entire lives. Yet, in Monica's deluded perspective, our lifelong bond with him meant nothing. At the funeral, Monica decided it was the perfect moment to create a spectacle. And I'm not talking about a discreet tear or a poignant eulogy. No, she chose to exploit my grandfather's death to make herself the center of attention. She stood up during the open mic, her mascara streaming down her face for added drama, and began wailing about how she was Daddy's little girl and how he had left her all alone in this cruel world. Keep in mind, this is a woman nearing 50 who had never referred to Granddad as Daddy before this day. But the theatrics escalated. In the middle of her performance, she pointed at us and declared loudly, "You ungrateful brats won't even get a penny. He left everything to his devout daughter." Yes, she actually called herself his devout daughter, as if she were playing a role in some absurd melodrama. At her proclamation, I was seething, ready to confront her right there. However, it was Zoe, typically the quiet one among us, who reacted first, but not as expected. She burst out laughing. What started as a suppressed giggle soon turned into roaring laughter. Wendy and I exchanged confused glances before joining in. The situation's utter ridiculousness became too much, and there we were, laughing hysterically at our grandfather's funeral while Monica threw her fit. It might have seemed inappropriate, but it was precisely what we needed to cut through the tension. The best part? Monica had absolutely no legal claim to anything. She wasn't biologically related to Granddad, had never been legally adopted, and her own mother had passed before Granddad did. She was, in essence, just squatting in our family home. When we pointed this out to her, her reaction was priceless. It was as though we were watching a live computer crash. Her face fell, her expression one of utter disbelief, and for a moment, she was speechless. gaping like a fish out of water. The rest of the funeral attendees were stunned into silence, the quiet so profound you could hear a pin drop. Then, in a perfectly timed comedic beat, someone's phone rang with the Price is Right theme song echoing through the church. The absurdity of it all somehow brought a surreal sense of relief, blending irony and levity at just the right moment. Fail sound indeed. The whole scene was almost comical. As Monica stormed out of the church, her face a fiery red, the last I saw of her was her fumbling at her car, jabbing her keys at the door handle instead of the lock. It seemed like karma was enjoying its moment. The audacity of Monica continued unabated. Just yesterday, she had the nerve to invite me over to my own house where she's still living rent-free to try and reconcile. She hoped I'd forget her outrageous behavior at the funeral and somehow warm up to her again. Despite knowing better, I went. Partly because I seemed to have a penchant for self-inflicted agony. The house was unrecognizable. All of Granddad's belongings were gone, replaced by what seemed like the remnants of a home goods clearance event. It was painful to see every trace of him just erased. Monica, playing the part of a gracious host, offered me tea in Granddad's favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Best Grandpa," which we had given him years ago. Watching her use it was almost too much to bear. She spent an hour making her case for why she deserved to inherit everything. She talked about her so-called sacrifices to take care of Granddad in his last years and claimed she was practically his daughter. I sat there nodding along while internally, I was imagining various scenarios in which I could evict her from the house. So, here I am, Reddit, seeking advice on how to remove this freeloader from my family home. It's astonishing how oblivious she was to her own precarious position until now. Any tips on how to evict such a tenacious squatter would be greatly appreciated. This house belongs to me and my cousins, and I'm determined not to let her take anything more from us. Thanks for sticking with me this far in my rant. It feels cathartic to get it all off my chest. And hey, at least we can all get a laugh out of Aunt Monica's spectacular cell phone mishap, right? Update 1. Hey Reddit, it's your favorite disinherited granddaughter again with some update. First, I want to address some comments from my previous post. For those suggesting I'm not grieving properly or that I'm just after Granddad's money, you can kindly take a long walk off a short pier. You don't get to tell me how to process my grief, nor do you understand the depth of my relationship with my grandfather. To those concerned about how I didn't notice Granddad's health decline sooner, hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? The man was stubborn, and I loved him dearly for it. He was indeed that quintessential member of the greatest generation, always insisting he was fine, even metaphorically speaking, if he was actively on fire. And Monica? Let's just say her virtue is as genuine as my love for tax season. She kept mum about any of Granddad's health issues, which, in retrospect, seems particularly suspect. For those who think I'm leveraging my grandfather's story for internet clout or financial gain, feel free to step away from this narrative. I'm firm in my conviction that the house, a family heirloom passed down through generations, rightfully belongs to us, and I'm not about to let a recent interloper like Monica stake her claim on it. Now let's dive into the juicier part of this update. Remember Monica's dramatic display at the funeral? Turns out one of my cousins, my money's on the twins given their penchant for theatrics, captured the whole scene on video, and as luck would have it, the video has gone viral. Monica is now infamous, but for all the wrong reasons. You might think this is harsh, but honestly, this feels like the universe's way of serving justice. The twins have been the family pranksters from the start, and Monica was long overdue for a taste of her own medicine. Speaking of pranks, let me share a classic that the twins orchestrated, which perfectly illustrates the lengths they'll go to when riled up. The rumor mill once churned out gossip that Monica and our high school principal, Mr. Phillip, had a secret past affair. The twins, seizing this tantalizing tidbit, decided to weave an elaborate hoax. They managed to hack into Monica's email, don't ask me the specifics, I stay blissfully ignorant for legal reasons, and began sending her faux love letters from Mr. Phillip. These weren't just any emails, they were poetic, filled with florid declarations of undying love and promises to reignite their supposed past romance. Monica lapped up these messages as if they were gospel, completely oblivious to the farce. For weeks, the twins sustained this elaborate ruse, concocting intricate reasons why Phillip couldn't yet meet her in person, always keeping the prospect of their romantic reunion tantalizingly just out of reach. Poor Monica, driven by desperation, swallowed the bait completely. The day of the supposed big reunion was comedy gold. Monica, decked out in a tweed jacket and pencil skirt that screamed retro secretary, stepped out with a hopeful gleam in her eye, but her dream quickly shattered into a million pieces when she found Zoe and Wendy practically rolling on the ground with laughter. The look of dawning realization on her face, absolutely priceless. My cousins, being the meticulous pranksters they are, took it a step further. They didn't just leave it at that embarrassing moment. They posted all the fake emails on Instagram and even shared them on the school's meme page. Overnight, Monica became the butt of jokes across the community. Yes, it might seem mean, but considering the years of her petty tyranny and emotional manipulation, it felt like a well-deserved comeuppance. Since the funeral video went viral, Monica's reputation has plummeted. The community that once commended her for her care of Granddad now shuns her, and her job at the school is on thin ice. Turns out students aren't exactly fond of a teacher who's infamous for her glee in disinheriting her partner's grandchildren. I've been trying to maintain some moral high ground despite not intending for her life to unravel this dramatically. But then again, as the saying goes, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Perhaps this ordeal will teach her that actions indeed have consequences. Update 2. Hey again, Reddit. It's been about 3 weeks since my last post, and there have been some significant developments. Brace yourselves because this is where things get even more complicated. Remember when I mentioned that Granddad never wrote that will? Turns out I might have been mistaken, or so Monica claims. She showed up at my apartment recently looking unusually pleased with herself and presented a document that she claims is Granddad's last will, complete with what she alleges is his signature. This document supposedly bequeaths everything: our family home, his assets, and possibly even his quirky tie collection, to her. I was taken aback, to say the least. Granddad cherished our family's legacy, particularly the house, and the thought of him handing everything over to Monica, a relative outsider, seems incredibly out of character. It just doesn't make sense. Granddad was adamant about making the will a family affair, insisting that we all be present for its creation. So, the revelation of a will that supposedly came into existence without any of us knowing about it immediately raised a host of red flags. I'm doing my best not to leap to conclusions here, but something is off. Maybe Granddad's health was declining sharply towards the end. Maybe his handwriting became unsteady, but after years of innocently forging his signature for school permission slips, sorry, Granddad, the signature on this will just doesn't match up. I'm not one to back down easily, especially not when it comes to my family's legacy. So, I turned into a detective. My first move? Consulting a signature expert. Thanks to Wendy's legal connections, we got a specialist to examine the signature on the will against an authentic sample from one of Granddad's old report cards. The expert's verdict? The signatures didn't match. Cue the suspenseful soundtrack because it looks like we've stumbled into a full-blown mystery. Next up, I confronted Monica about the witness, or lack thereof. A will needs a witness, right? That's basic will writing protocol. Monica claimed she witnessed it herself. How terribly convenient. When I questioned why none of the family was present, she tried to guilt trip me, suggesting we were too wrapped up in our own lives to care about our ailing grandfather. Nice attempt at manipulation, Monica, but I'm not falling for it. Then, I reached out to Granddad's lawyer. Fun fact, I'm currently dating his daughter. Feel free to drop your congratulations below. Interestingly, the lawyer was completely unaware of any such will, which he found highly suspicious given Granddad's meticulous nature with legal matters. He even mentioned that if Granddad had really made this will under dubious circumstances, it could potentially be a case of elder abuse and exploitation. So here's where we stand. 3 solid pieces of evidence, all pointing to the same conclusion. The will is as fake as Monica's claims of being a natural redhead at 50. No offense to dyed redheads, but come on, Monica. My patience has been tested, but it's clear now, more than ever, that we need to challenge this will. The stakes are high, and it's about preserving more than just assets. It's about honoring Granddad's true wishes. I've been patient, I've tried to be understanding, but there's a limit to how much one can tolerate. Now it's time to take definitive action and reclaim my family's home from Monica. So, I turn to you, Reddit, needing guidance on how to legally evict this usurper from our lives. I'm all ears for both legal advice and creative, but legal solutions. And to clarify, that was indeed a joke. I'm not here to plot any actual crimes, so keep those lawyer hats on, folks. Here's the situation. Monica has deeply entangled herself into our family under false pretenses, exploiting my grandfather in his vulnerable final days, and now attempting to usurp our inheritance. My emotions are a mix of anger, betrayal, and resolve. I'm ready to take this battle to the courts if necessary. Edit. To the user who suggested unleashing a family of raccoons to evict Monica, your creativity got a chuckle out of me. But let's stick to the legal methods. Though, imagining Monica dealing with a band of raccoons did lighten the mood. Update 3. Hello to the wonderful Reddit community. It's been 5 weeks since my last post, and I have some significant updates to share. We did it. We finally got Monica out of the house. And not just out, but completely removed. Her belongings are on the lawn, and the locks are chained. Let's rewind to how we got here. After gathering all your advice, I decided to confront Monica head-on with all the evidence we had collected proving the will was a fabrication. I had hoped for a moment of admission from her, but she stubbornly maintained the will's authenticity, accusing us, in turn, of trying to swindle her. Faced with her obstinance, I presented Monica with a stark choice: leave of her own accord or face legal repercussions, including charges of fraud, elder abuse, and potentially more, as my lawyer was eager to explore all possible avenues. I gave her a month to vacate, showing a bit of leniency despite the circumstances because I couldn't completely disregard compassion. As she prepared to leave, a new development came to light. Granddad, always cautious, had installed cameras throughout the house, a fact we had overlooked until we regained full access to the property. Upon reviewing the footage from these cameras, the footage we discovered was nothing short of horrifying. It was both heartbreaking and infuriating to watch. There was Monica, force-feeding Granddad foods packed with sugar and rice, foods that were downright dangerous for his diabetes. This abuse had been happening for months, exacerbating his condition until his body couldn't handle it anymore. The audio recordings were even more disturbing. The way she spoke to him, the horrible things she said, it was clear emotional abuse. She threatened to isolate him from us, even blackmailing him with threats of a nursing home if he didn't comply with her cruel demands. My once strong, proud grandfather was reduced to a shadow of himself. Reflecting on the memories of learning family recipes in that old kitchen with him, I feel a profound sense of guilt for not having seen the signs sooner, for leaving him alone with someone so malevolent. But hindsight is always 20/20, and guilt won't change the past. Only our actions now can make a difference. With the overwhelming evidence from the security footage, we're pressing charges against Monica for elder abuse and fraud. It's a strong case, our lawyer assures us, and justice seems imminent. Moreover, her professional life has imploded. After we shared the footage with the school board, they acted swiftly. Her reputation as an educator is irrevocably damaged, with parents rightfully outraged that their children were under the tutelage of someone capable of such heinous acts. Monica is now jobless, soon to be homeless, and facing serious legal repercussions. As for the house, it's back in our family's hands, where it rightfully belongs. As I process all that has happened, grieving for Granddad, boiling with anger, yet somewhat relieved that the truth has come to light, I realize this journey has been grueling but necessary. This saga may not have the fairy tale ending we all hoped for. I'd give anything to have Granddad back, pottering around in his garden and cracking his terrible dad joke. However, there's a solace in knowing that justice is being served. We've exposed the truth, and in doing so, perhaps we've prevented this from happening to another vulnerable elder. To everyone on Reddit who has followed this story, offered advice, or just sent supportive thoughts, your solidarity has been invaluable. I couldn't have navigated this without your support. So, as I close this chapter of our family saga, I leave you with this. Cherish your loved ones, guard them fiercely, and let the story of Monica be a cautionary tale against allowing such toxicity into your lives. Stay gold, Reddit, and thank you for everything.